Okay, welcome back to the True Potential Women's Summit, where ambitious women can overcome anxiety and self doubt, communicate with confidence so that they can receive the loving connection and significance that they desire. Today, we have a very, very special guest. Her name is Jodie Benveniste, and she is an intuitive parenting coach. And I love this concept about being very conscious as parents and really utilizing our gifts and our intuition in guiding us in how we guide our children to be really healthy, whole, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and really well supported, not only in childhood, but as they step into adulthood in the future and really thrive and creating that foundation. So I'm so excited to have you here today, Jodie.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Wonderful. So tell us a little bit about what attracted you to becoming an intuitive parenting coach.
Personal experience. So I've been a parent for 14 years now. I've got a daughter and a son. And I think my experience of becoming a parent was there was a lot of resistance and resentment. They were like the overriding emotions that were going on for me, where I kind of didn't really embrace the change and the opportunity and what was actually really amazing. Even though I loved my children, it's not that I didn't love them. It's just that I found the change so profound, and I didn't feel prepared. And I just didn't go with it. I really resisted. And I started to, and of course, you can only do that for so long until things start to fall apart. And that's when I realized, well, I can't keep going this way. So, I had this psychology background, but I also had this opening up into being more intentional, more conscious, more aware, more intuitive, all of those things. And it's been this process to really unpack that and to work out how to use that in my parenting and in my life. And, the biggest lesson really has been about how often we parent from our heads, which is often a place of like judgment and expectations. And it's not always a very friendly place
Right, right.
towards our kids or towards ourselves. And that's when I realized that that's a very limited way to raise our children. And in fact, it's not going to help them to be whole and happy and healthy and everything we want for them. And that's when I realized, okay, we need to get out of our heads. I mean, there's still a lot of value that can come from that area, but we also need to get into our hearts and into our soul or our intuition.
Right. I love that. And it's so important because I think sometimes when we're scared or we're overwhelmed, as many new moms are, I know for me, I have a little 8 month old, and it is a huge transformational shift. Even if you're mentally and emotionally prepared, even if you have background, I mean, it really is a shift of your time, of your energy, of your power with your time and what you can control and what you can't. There's so many things that really force you into surrender. And I think so many of us as women, especially ambitious women, it's hard to let go of that control of, what we can do and really settle into that surrender. And I think what you're speaking about is how can we through that transition of change and overwhelm, one, be really well supported in that shift, and also do it in a really beautiful way that is conscious and intentional, where we're also surrendering, because that's really what is required. To
You're so
surrender.
that way, and it is a surrender, and it is like you say, it's a change in time and energy, but it's also in identity and
Totally.
our awareness of who we are. And I think, yeah, I've always been a very ambitious career kind of person, and to have that shift sort of well, it was imposed on me, and not really expecting it in the way that it happened.
Right.
Yeah, it's when you actually surrender, it you open up to a whole new version of yourself. And I've always said that I felt like I've had to become a better person to actually raise my kids in the way I really want to. And I'm actually so grateful now for that. Years ago I was not.
Yeah.
But
Right.
now
You were in the
I am.
breakdown and you didn't realize it was a breakthrough.
Exactly
Until
right.
now, and probably in these
That's right.
past 10 years or 12 years, you've known that that breakthrough happened and is valuable. But probably when you're in it, as many women on the call that are going through any breakdown moment, whether it be becoming a new parent or a career shift or a relationship challenge or whatever the case is, sometimes we resist and fight those breakdown moments. And really, when we embrace it and surrender, we open ourselves up to the breakthrough. And it sounds like that's what you did.
Absolutely. Yes.
And you help other women do that too as they step into this role as parents.
Yeah, and it is, and it's kind of unpacking some of those beliefs that we've, been ingrained with, but it's also about tapping into different parts of ourselves and realizing that when we really parent from our loving heart and energy, you create this beautiful dynamic with your children, and then what happens is that you start to learn and grow as much as they do, and it's really an incredible relationship, which I don't think we can really experience. I mean, there's lots of value in other relationships, but there's something very special about that parent-child one if you open yourself up to it and surrender.
Yes. And I think, interestingly enough, I think it can be so easy if we're not conscious that we default to how maybe we were parented. And some of us didn't experience a very loving, oh, I understand that you're developing, and, didn't have that warm and fuzzy conscious experience. And so sometimes if we don't have that, we can maybe fall into those controlling or expectations or demanding, which didn't feel so good when we were on the receiving end of it.
Yeah, it's so true. And our default, as you say, is how we were raised. And we might not be consciously aware of it, but it's there in the background, it's there coming through. And for some people, they think back and they're like, I don't want to do what my parents did. But then they find themselves doing it.
Yeah. Oh, right.
And then other parents, really feel like they can't live up to what their parents offered them. So sometimes there can,
Or try to overcompensate to do the
yes,
opposite, but then they still have all this like energy around it.
that's right. They're
I think
still
that
holding.
that's also part of it too.
Exactly right. And then you get triggered. If you're holding that energy and you get triggered, and then things blow up, and then you don't really behave in the way you want to.
Right. So
Mm.
I love this next question because how do parents really, and maybe with some of the clients that you work with, how do you help lay the groundwork so that they start thinking about becoming the best version of themselves and setting that intention and opening up that space? Can you guide us through a little tidbit snapshot of what that could look like for somebody that is on the call that could start this process for themselves?
Yeah, so I think it feels like it's lots of things, but I suppose it is in essence, first of all, realizing that if we're getting in judgment, if we are getting triggered, if we're getting caught up in emotions that don't feel good to us, we actually have an opportunity to get out of the head and the stories that are going on for us, and to drop down into our heart and to bring some loving energy to that feeling, to that situation, to ourselves, to our children. And that just opens up a different way of feeling through and thinking through the situation. And then that means we can make different choices. And then we also, if we open up that space, I talk about the difference between responding and reacting. And the only difference between responding and reacting is that when we respond, we create a little bit of space between something that's happened and what we do next. And when we create that little bit of space, it might be a breath, it might be a walking away for a minute, it might be coming back to it later on. But it actually allows us to get out of our heads and the stories, the unhelpful stories that are going on, tap into our heart energy, and then it opens up our intuition where we can actually come up with better ideas and solutions. So that's and what that process does is it helps us to also grow our own self-awareness, which is what we need as parents. We need to own our own stuff, and we need to not blame our children or our partners or anyone else or the situation or the parents over there or the school and we just need to own our own stuff
Stay in our
and
lane.
stay in our lane, and then realize that, when we actually start to work through some of these, own our own uncomfortable feelings and work through them, then the sting, the hold that it has on us can go, and then we can actually open up a different energy exchange with our children.
Right. Yeah, I know. I think it's so easy if people, I know for me, like, I've always been very intentional about everything that I do and like in what I create as a parent or as a partner. I've always had that like front end game, and not everyone thinks that. Sometimes they're in it and then they're like in survival mode. And then they take things personally. And then it's like and then it's like our child is doing this to me, like as though this like little thing is like consciously intentionally trying to make you stressed out, which if you think about developmentally, no, they're just going through a developmental phase right now. And I
Yeah.
think being able to not take it personally and really try to empathize and understand that's what I automatically do. That may
Mm.
serve some people on the call, like to start looking at it from a different lens. How
Yes.
can you give some tips so people can start shifting and looking at it from that empathetic lens as
Hmm.
opposed to a take it personally, I have to kind of get in this power struggle kind of relationship?
Yeah, so I think if we're trying to shift that, one thing sometimes it helps just to take that little step back and to reflect on our values and what's important to us, and to kind of set that as our foundation for our family.
Mm.
So just go, well, what kind of child do I really want to raise, and what kind of a parent do I really want to be, and just have some foundation kind of touch points for yourself that you can come back to, and when you say, "Oh, I actually really want a family that's fun and creative and cooperative and respectful and all those things," and then you can sit back in and say, "Well, am I being that? Am I modelling that as a parent?
Mm-hmm.
Am I being that for myself? Am I being that for my child?" So I think sometimes it's about sort of taking that step back to then step forward into those tough moments, and then to have a practice, which is, I think we all need a practice, whether it's meditation or whether it's some kind of just simple checking in, where you actually connect in with yourself and how you're feeling, and then to just to work through whether that's how you want it to be in that moment, and not in a judgmental or a harsh way.
Shaming, right?
Yeah, no, not in that, but just in like a curious, interested. I'm in this. This is important. I'm here to learn, and I'm here to, to really open up my heart even wider
Yes.
to really embrace this.
Yes, I as I'm hearing you speak, it talks about wholehearted living. It reminds me of Brene Brown,
Yep.
and I love this taking a step back so you can take a step forward. I love that quote. I don't know if that's from you, but it's brilliant, because it really is so important that we have to constantly evaluate and course correct and not shame ourselves or should ourselves, because then we're shifting that energy, which we don't want for our children, nor do we want with our relationship for ourselves. To be able to constantly be in alignment. So what's your practice? Do you meditate on a regular basis to be in alignment?
I meditate every day. I do kind of a meditation where I repeat sort of words or phrases or sentiments or intentions to myself, and that's my practice. But then throughout the day, I'm always trying to, and this is not that I'm perfect at it,
Right.
I try to,
Progress, not perfection.
yes, that's right.
Progress, not perfection.
I just try to have regularly check in and just see how I'm feeling and where I'm at,
Yeah.
so that I'm just continuing to build that self awareness. And then the other thing is I do is I go for walks. So I just go for not, cardio, let's burn some calorie walks, but just some meditative, reflective, where I just, again, it's just a process of breathing and connect and checking in. And I think it's so important. I don't feel like I could be the parent I am now if I didn't have some practices like that help me.
Yes, I think it's so important that we have these rituals and these routines, like you said, meditation, being in nature, taking a shower to kind of clean our energy at the end of the day or at the beginning of our day, or maybe both. Just
Yeah.
to be able to really, even when we brush our teeth, like I'm gonna brush my teeth so that what I say is very clear and impeccable. Whatever rituals that help us do that. And I think that it can really help us when we're in nature or give ourselves that, it's, I think, almost like feminine grace time. Like this
Yes.
feminine, it's very gentle, because it's so easy for us to get into the rat race, and that actually disconnects us from ourselves as women. And it goes back to that we have to take a step back in order to take a step forward. So we're fully connected to ourselves, and we need that silent, sacred space that I don't think we give ourselves enough time to honor.
I agree, and I so agree that connection, our own connection with ourselves, is so important, because that's the connection that's going to really deeply connect us to our children. And then what, of course, that does is that our children sense and feel that, and they understand that they are this beautiful, amazing person for who they are, and they're absolutely allowed to be that. And that it comes from that connection, but it actually begins with us connecting in with ourselves. And the problem sometimes with parenting is that we can look at an issue we're facing with our children. It might be their sleep, or the fussy eating, or the behavior issues, or the whatever it is, and we can look for a solution to that problem. And we often want a quick fix. We want to, can I do A, B, C, D, and then everything will be fine. But actually, it's what's going to help us through those issues is our relationship with our children. And when we're connecting with ourselves, we're more likely to find a way through that situation, because we've got that strength we bring into it.
Yes, I think sometimes we may rely too much on doing, just because society values it, and so that's that quick fix solution, very cerebral. But we might be missing the depth of an opportunity that actually is so simple.
Yes.
But because we've been so much in the doing, we exert all this energy to try to force a square peg in a round hole, thinking that that's what's going to make it happen. And then we're frustrated when maybe it's about also valuing being and
Yeah.
enjoying as much as we value doing. That when we have all of that, which I think is what you were alluding to and directly speaking about, is really honoring the being of the child. And in order to
Yeah.
honor the being of the child, we also have to honor the being within ourselves and the connection with our being, rather than just being doers.
Yeah, absolutely. And we live in a world that honors doing and
Oh,
busyness. Badge of honor.
it's true.
And
And I've been in it too. I mean, I can attest,
I,
like, and it burns you out and stifles you if you do
yeah,
too much of that. It's
yeah.
just not
And
worth it.
And in fact, our children, particularly when they're little, are very good at slowing us down and bringing us into a different tempo, because that's their world. That's how they operate. And when it's very easy to resist that, we want to force them into our busyness. But actually, when we retreat back with them, oh my God, it's so much more beautiful, isn't it?
It is. I know for me, I have an 8 month old, and she is just a delight. And just, I was definitely setting the tone and space in my schedule. Like I was reducing my hours. Because I really wanted to create space on my plate of my life to honor this beautiful opportunity to be a mother and to be present with her, as well as being a contributor to society, and sometimes we have to take things off the plate in order to put things on. And I love the opportunity to actually slow down and feed her,
Mm.
or slow down and just play with her, be in curiosity with her, be in discovery with her, which is something in our busyness that we lose touch with, but it's really an innate thing that we all need: pleasure, play, curiosity, wonder, stillness, presence. And it's such a beautiful gift when we enter into parenthood, or even if women on the call aren't parents yet. It's something, what a beautiful gift to give to our little kid inside of ourselves.
Yeah,
It's
that's right.
it's just precious. I mean, really. And when we fight it, it's like we're fighting a gift.
Yes, we are. And we're fighting ourselves. That's what we're doing.
Totally. Yeah. So I love it that how we can course correct at any point in time. We don't have to beat ourselves up. Oh, I should have done that from the beginning. It's like at any point in time you can course correct,
You
right?
can, because you are way ahead of me, Andrea. I was not in that space when I was in babyland or even toddlerland. It's taken me much longer to actually get to this space where I can actually be that loving, present, mindful parent that I always wanted to be.
Yes.
Uh, but it's fine. Like, my kids are fine. They're amazing. We have a
Good.
fantastic relationship. And yes, I can look back and maybe I can regret and maybe I can think, I wish I'd done all of this sooner. But that was our experience, and
Totally.
we've lived through it, and we're now here, and it's a good place to be.
And what I think is beautiful that for you as a coach, that you actually can relate so much to anybody on that continuum of that path, because you've been there, and you've also like steered in a different direction, so you can really help people navigate no matter what phase that they are in, because you've probably can relate to any of those phases. So every pain point is also a possibility. So I think that actually probably serves you in the work that you do and what you offer.
Yeah, all that pain was worth it.
All that pain possibility. That's right. So let's see. So if you could give a few nuggets that you really would like the women on this call to take with them and to start implementing them, what would you say, like the top three tips or nuggets that you would want them to embrace?
Yeah. So I do think it's about parenting with our head, heart, and soul. So with our heads, I think that if we can stay out of judgment and instead be curious and interested and explore what comes up for us and the stories going on, I think that can really help us to expand and grow. And then with our hearts, I think it's about tapping into that loving energy, actually feeling it within ourselves and then sharing it. Certainly sending that loving energy to ourselves, but then sharing it with everyone else in our life. And then also honoring the soul of parenting, which is to tap into our inner intuition, our inner wisdom. The insights that lie there are so valuable. And if we're always looking outside ourselves for the answers, we're going to get caught up in lots of noise, which won't be helpful. So actually privileging, listening, allowing some space for that wisdom to come through.
Yes, yes, I know. Thinking about vaccinations, right? There's so many different, vaccinate, don't vaccinate. You can get really overwhelmed by all of it, and I think that there's a place for the headspace of getting the information, but then I think it's also important to go in with your heart and that soul guidance to really trust your decision. So
Yes.
how can women on the call? Were there any other nuggets before I go into my next question? I want to make sure I don't cut you off if you wanted to add more.
No, I just think the other thing was around actually the amazing opportunity that parenting offers us to actually grow ourselves into and to heal some of those wounds, because they come up. Children trigger them, and so if we actually are willing to be open to that experience and to surrender to it and to have those rituals that help support us to process them, then it is the most incredible experience that opportunity we've been given.
Wonderful. So this brings me into my next question. So I have two questions. One is about vulnerability, and the other
Yes.
one is about decisiveness. Okay.
Mm.
So, and since intuition ties in with both of them, of the heart and the soul, I thought that might be a good place for us to close. So, with this, so the decision. So, how can we discern between what is the right decision using our intuition? What is distraction and shiny object? And what is actually like, how can we know if it's our intuition that's guiding us versus our ego or something else?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So this is something that I've had to learn because it is practice. And it is about our heads. What comes from our heads is like shouty, shouty. It feels heavy, judgmental. Oftentimes we'll second guess ourselves. We'll think one thing and then the next, and we won't feel certain. We will just have this, you can argue both ways. When you actually drop down into your heart and soul, our intuitive voice, our inner wisdom is speaks a lot more softly. Comes from a really loving and much more pure space where it just feels like there's sort of ease and flow and peace, really. So it's and it can be hard when we've lived in our heads for so long. It can be hard to recognise the difference. But the more you do it, the more. And in fact, we already all use our intuition in many ways, but it's actually about doing it with a bit more conscious awareness so that you can differentiate. But when you come to making decisions, it's great and fine to go and get all the information, but then you need to filter it all and you need to bring it back to yourself and you need to sit with it for a while and you need to feel it within yourself, and that's where the wisdom comes from.
Yes, and I think it really also requires a level of stillness, giving
Yes.
yourself that sacred space, and being patient. I
Yes.
think that is a prerequisite. If you have those pieces in place, you open up a space for intuition and for that listening to really come through. It's not like
Mm,
let me go sit down and meditate for 5 minutes and figure it out and then get the answer. Because
that's right.
it'll be in that frenzied ego place. So it has
That's
to have some of that tone and then that's where the clarity of our decisions comes from. And sometimes we have to give ourselves like 5 days, 4 days, 3 days, revisit the question, be in the question.
yeah.
And I think that's where we want to like fill it in with a certainty, and then we lose an opportunity of the truth, and then we end up wasting a bunch of extra energy unnecessarily
And
than
then the other
if you just
thing,
taken the time.
that's exactly right. And the insight might drop in at any time. And then, of course, what we have to do is trust it. Because oftentimes we
Key.
can hear it,
And then we're
but
like,
then,
that's not it, that's not it.
yeah, that's right.
That's too simple, right?
Yeah.
So trusting it, and
Yeah.
so that's really important. And so sometimes, so this brings up to like trust and vulnerability. So let's see, as people's stuff is coming up, as their parents, or if they're not, if they're just like stuff is coming up of their past, how do they stay? What ways do you, I guess let's personalize it and we can kind of have a conversation about this. How do we stay in our vulnerability enough so we can get intimate with it? Because a lot of times we want to get busy, so we don't get intimate. So how can we be intimate with ourselves as those triggers and stuff comes up so we can actually clear it and really return home to the truth of ourselves, which I think trust and vulnerability tie in with that. Do you have any input there? I know that these are kind of deep questions, but I'm just so curious.
Well, it's so interesting that you brought up vulnerability because this has been my big, massive life lesson that I have had to learn. And I have really gone kicking and screaming. It's like, I don't want to be vulnerable. I'm strong. I don't want to have to open up my heart. That feels really hard. And it's much easier to stay closed. And look, oh my God, this has been a big one for me. And you know what? It's just been a process of actually sitting with feelings that do feel uncomfortable, actually sending them love, acknowledging them, seeing value in them. I believe that every single emotion that comes into within us is a messenger, is sending us a message, a really important message. And if we actually learn how to flow with our emotions rather than kind of either suppress them and try and, stamp them out, or kind of get stuck in them and amplify them. If we actually say, oh, I'm feeling angry, and then to actually acknowledge and flow through and allow the anger to be acknowledged and to pass. I mean, that's what emotions are supposed to do, but we tend to either engage too much or too little with them. So it's been a practice of actually allowing and valuing what comes up.
Even the wobbly parts.
Yes.
Especially the wobbly parts. And I love that practice of sending love to that place, because when we do that, we open ourselves up to the gift that's on the other side of it. Because it's an opportunity, it's bubbling up, so it can actually be transformed.
That's right.
And when we stuff it back down, we're not ebbing and flowing. We're just like creating a potential tidal wave later.
That's exactly right. And the other thing I do is that sometimes I engage with the emotion where I try and visualize what it looks like. So, for example, sometimes in my business where I'm feeling a bit fearful about something, and then I just did this little meditation where I was like, well, what is this fear? And my fear came up as this beautiful little teddy bear who just needed a cuddle. So we can actually engage with our emotions in different ways and not be overwhelmed by them, and also not suppress them.
Totally. It releases that energy. It actually diffuses it. And when we just surrender and are in that vulnerability, it's less powerful too. So it's less intimidating than had we just avoided it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lovely. Wonderful. Well, this has been such a fabulous conversation. Incredible value. What is your website or gift that you'd like to share with our audience? And I'll include it also underneath this conversation. But can you share what that is briefly?
Sure. Yeah. So on my website, I've got an intuitive parenting blueprint, which is talks about the head, heart, and soul of parenting, and some practices that people can try with each of those areas of our parenting. And it's a free gift for everyone.
Wonderful. Well, I will include that link so that all of you on the call can access that. If this spoke to you, if this resonated with you, if you really are ready to step into intuitive parenting in a powerful way, Jodie would be a great resource for you. So thank you so much, Jodie. It's been wonderful having you on this summit.
Thank you, Andrea.
Wonderful. Take care.
Thank you.